Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Experience Kills. It's just the two of us today. I'm your host Ben and with me is Rob.
Hello everyone, it's good to be back.
It's good to have you.
Another sunny Sunday morning.
Sunny? Sunny?
Yeah.
Sunny where you
It's
are?
light.
I mean there's light.
There's light, it counts.
Welcome to the daytime. Instead of one of our late night ones with Cameron. Richard was due to join us this week, and this was the advertised episode where we were going to be talking about Darksiders Genesis as the first of our Game Pass book club, game club things. And I've actually played some, and I think Rob's played some as well, and I think Richard had played some, to be honest. However, Richard has had to cry off at the last minute. He's got other commitments, and they are important, and I won't oust him what they are right now. I don't think that'd be fair, but no, it's legit. So you have a little two of us again, like back in the day. Like we're on episode 10 now. I think it was back episode 2 or 3. There was the last one where it was just the two of us. But it's nice to get back to just me and you, Rob. We can have an intimate time and share this with all of our listeners. It turns out our listeners in Japan, of which we have many. It turns out I was looking at the stats for that, mate. Very strange. Like number 1, the UK, makes sense, right? Number 2, Japan. I was like, do they just like listening to our dulcet English tones, do you think? Or do you think they're expats? If you listen in Japan, send us a message. I'd love to know more.
Comment.
I really would.
Comment or send us a message on YouTube, depending if you watch it on YouTube or listen to it as a podcast. Let us know. Tweet us.
Dude.
We spit out our socials enough. So
All
tweet
the time.
us.
Tweet us at Experience Kills, or me personally at DIYE, or Rob personally at Homeless Mr. Gibbs. We're all over the place. You can't avoid us, frankly, even if you tried. And in other crazy stats I wanted to share, the most popular audio file we have on the podcasts now, specifically from the podcast feeds, not an episode of Experience Kills when we do one of these chats. It's a review one, and it was Ace Combat 7 from like 2 years ago. We did that, me and Cameron. I don't know why, but for some reason, the most people are going through the list of over 100 different audio options and downloading that one on their podcast provider. I couldn't tell you why. That's really weird, isn't it?
That is a little bit odd, especially considering it was Ace Combat 7 of all things.
It's a good game, really good game. Don't get me wrong, really, really good flight sim fighter thing. I actually went back and watched the review to remind myself of it after finding out that it was super popular, and I was like, oh, cool, all right. Not great. I sound terrible in it. Like my audio quality is garbage, which is upsetting to hear. But yeah, cool. Whatever floats your boat. You might notice already that due to us having just the two of us today, it's maybe a bit of a tangential show. I mean, we're going to go off on things, I think, Rob. What do you think?
But when do we not go off on tangents? I mean, come on. We have a vague topic and structure, because believe it or not, this stuff's organised. And we never seem to pay attention to it.
I spend a lot of time, actually, making these show notes, Rob. I spend a lot of time,
Indeed you do.
And a lot of love, and a lot of effort goes into organising the news, especially, that we talk about. And I don't always say, but I get almost all the news from Eurogamer, because I think they're great. I really like what they do. I really like how they cover games, and they did the reviews, and they've got Digital Foundry as well. So I like to always make sure the links are for those guys, and throw some sort of links, UK based, smaller. It's not one of these monolithically giant outlets like IGN or Kotaku or Polygon or whatever. I dig Eurogamer. They're good people.
It's also showing our sources for where we get our information from, as we are not oracles.
Yeah, well, yes, we're not exactly on the inside, are we?
No.
We're on the outside looking in. But look, I want a quick update. We are getting down to single digits away now from 1,000 subs on YouTube. We're at about 12, I think it is, off that now. So we're so close. I can't wait to announce that and celebrate that. That's a huge milestone for us, because we just a bunch of guys talking crap. And look, while we're talking about talking crap, I don't normally do this, but like I said, tangential. I had a really interesting argument with a guy in the comments section of the Poker Club review in the last week. So do check that out. But basically, there's a gentleman there who I thought at first was like being hard on us for not enjoying the game enough. Turns out we liked it too much. And it was, we don't know enough about poker games and what makes a good electronic poker game. And I thought, Rob, you being a croupier, would have been fairly good as background in knowledge, but
I worked many hours in a casino. It was over a 3-month period, so not exactly years of experience, but they worked me hard, and I kind of get the culture, or at least a portion of the culture of poker. So I think it was as good a representation as you can get in video games. Because obviously there is a point where like the social deduction and the bluffing elements and all of that sort of stuff. Sorry, the podcast cat is begging for attention. The social deduction elements and trying to analyze people to see if they're bluffing, all of that is a hugely important part of the game. But unless you're in a casino, it's going to be really hard to get that. Very hard. So, speaking of podcast cat, here he is.
Hey, Arthur's here.
So I think Poker Club did a really good job of trying to imitate that environment as best they could. It's not perfect, but it's as close as you can get, because you do have like the table movement system. You've got people moving around. Like I think I mentioned, if someone's constantly going back to their cards and looking at the cards in the middle of the table and back to their cards and flip-flopping back and forth, kind of implies the hand's a little bit of a dud, doesn't it?
Or they're just, or they're so excited because they've got pocket aces, or they've literally landed like a flush or a straight out of the flop, and they're like, oh my god. So there are things you can tell from that, absolutely. And I think so. He actually posted in one of his comments, I think probably his own review of the game, right? Like it was this review he copied and pasted in, and the criticism in there was that it took a long time and that it didn't display all the information, clinically. And it's interesting because that's clearly a choice that Ripstone made with this game to try and simulate a realistic experience of poker rather than just here's all the information, which is how a lot of the electronic versions of poker do it. And so there's a lot of options out there for you to play that game, right? Exactly. I won't deny it though. It does have technical issues. It's still got this weird like light effect ghosting on the edges of the screen, which I know they're working on, but it's still there and it is quite distracting. It doesn't affect from you playing the game of poker, but it is annoying, and there were connection issues, but I've played it since, and those seem to have been resolved. Now they're saying the other thing is that a game of poker, when you've got a full table, takes a long time because you have to go to each person and then they have an amount of time to choose what they're going to do. But I'm sorry, but that's just poker, isn't it? I mean, it might take you a long time. A hand might take you a while to play, if somebody keeps raising, or if people were considering things. It's part of the game. So I don't understand that as a criticism. I really don't. So each to their own. It was nice having a bit of a back and forth. It was unfortunate the person started off quite hostile. I mean, it's a shame when people can't just discuss something with someone in a kind of legitimately even-handed way. This person did come at me quite aggressively, but that was cool. We had a chat. He didn't reply to my last comment, so clearly he'd had enough of me. I'm guessing not a subscriber, probably. However, thank you for coming into the comments. Thank you for watching the video. But at the end of the day, like I explained in one of my comments, experience kills. We approach games from a position of love, from a position of no developer wants to make a bad game, right? They may have issues, but literally no developer is going to set out to trick the gamers into buying shit. That is not how it works, unless you're talking about the worst kind of asset rip-off shit you find on Steam, right? But for the most part, on the consoles and stuff where we played this, that is just not what you get. That's not a motivation. Who wants to pour hundreds of hours, thousands of hours of their life into developing something that's crap? Nobody's trying to do that. So I think people sometimes take things very personally, and can get really bogged down in that, but you just have to remember that. To talk about it being light out, Rob, I'm actually sat here as the light is dying. It's getting really, really dark this morning.
Wonderful.
So it's just like, because I've not got any lights on in my room, but I'm going to have to put some on because it's getting really dark in here.
I do have my light on, to be fair.
I've just got the screens and the light on the webcam. New webcam, everyone. I hope you're appreciating the new higher resolution and better, more naturalistic lighting. If you could actually see.
Speaking of new kit, Ben, how is your new monitor doing? Because you did a bit of upgrading last weekend, didn't you?
I did. So with Xbox One S in mind, which is what I've got, Series S in mind, which I've got in my office, I was like, well, let's get one I can take advantage of the 1440p resolution. at 120 hertz, so a high frame rate, 1440, which is what the S is all about, basically. So I bought myself a new BenQ Fancy Pants HDR supported 27-inch 1440p up to 4K resolution, I think, QHD. All the bells and whistles. Got it in the Black Friday sale. I'm using it right now. It's lovely. The only thing I'm noticing, next mission for me next year is going to be building my own gaming rig, Fancy Pants PC, because just running 2 screens off of this, one at a higher resolution, my computer isn't loving it. So it's kind of like already a noticeable dip in performance. So that's a bit annoying. But that's next year. That's 2021 goals.
It would also be handy if you knew an IT professional that would be able to assist you with such a thing. Oh no, wait.
Shall we? We could even do that as a feature. We could do building Ben's computer as a video. Yeah. Maybe we could look at doing something like that. Well, yeah, we'll have to think about that, but that could be fun. If we can be in the same bubble, that is. Oh boy, God, Christmas. Lockdown on Palooza is still continuing in the UK. We love it. It's brilliant. Okay, so we've had a nice chat there, Rob. We don't always have a chance to do that because obviously there's 3 of us and we've got so much to cover. We do have quite a lot of news though, so shall we get into it?
Let's get into the news, and I can tell you're excited about the first one already with the Cyberpunk 2077 gameplay leaking on the internet. I'm amazed more hasn't leaked, and I would not be surprised if this wasn't leaked by CG Projekt Red themselves.
Oh, you conspiracy theorist, you. Oh,
yeah,
my lord.
I've got tinfoil hat proverbially on because I've got a cat on my lap, so I can't get it.
I mean, that isn't the most impossible thing, especially as not more has come out since. Which, but from an optimistic point of view, this means there must be physical retail discs of the game out there which can be captured, because it was captured off of PS4, I believe, and then like the first 20 minutes of the game went up and stuff. I didn't watch it. I'm not going to watch that. I've watched the Night City things they've been doing, the episodes. I'm ready. I've got my law book behind me. I'm going to reread that. I've already read it once. I'm probably going to go through it again. I've been reading the comic tie-in they've done. Yeah, December 10th is nearly here.
Delay.
Sorry?
You're ready for the next delay and pushback, right?
I'm all right. I'm going to I'm putting the flag down right now. Okay? It's coming out December 10th.
Yeah, but you put flags down on other points before.
I know, but I've been reluctant to do it again, and I'm doing it now. We're like 2 weeks off. It has to be out on December 10th, or I'm gonna die.
I shall look forward to speaking to you on December 10th to find out how Cyberpunk is and how that's going for you.
I hope I'm right. I hope to all the cyberpunk gods. I pray to thee, ancient ones. Do I need to sacrifice any virgins? I'll do that if I have to, just to make this come out December 10th. Just tell me. Tell me what I need to do.
Not that. It's my answer. Not that.
So we'll move on to, like, this a non-story in many ways, but Microsoft and Sony were both kind of, mea culpa, probably could have handled the pre-orders a bit better for the soz.
Isn't this something they do every single time something happens?
Like hardware release, yeah.
Yeah. So we could have done this a bit better. It's like, you could have done, but you didn't.
You could have had more stock.
Yeah.
That would have been good. That would have been a good way of doing it. I mean, Phil Spencer says they're looking at, like, taking deposits and stuff like that to prevent it. When they say they could have handled things better, what they mean is they could have prevented the bot-based scalpers ripping off the system better. That's what they're talking about, right? So when you have this zero risk pre-order system where you can just, if you can get in there, you can you don't even pay for it straight away. Yeah. You don't pay for it until near dispatch. So there's zero risk to you. So if you have a bot set up that can do that 100 times and then sell that privilege to other people after the fact, well, yeah, you're probably going to do it if you're that kind of person, aren't you? That's not challenging, and that's unfortunate. And the problem is this is something that's gone on for a long time in, for example, the sneakerhead community. Are you aware of this, Rob?
The sneakerhead community. Please.
Yeah.
So, is this for sneakers rather than trying to sneak before something?
So,
which is what I originally thought you said.
So sneaking around the Sam Fisher community. Sam and Metal Gear just teaming up. No, so in the sneaker community, the release of limited edition shoes is very common, right? It happens quite often. They're often very limited, often expensive, but they generate this kind of pre-order buzz, this idea of getting on their website as soon as it's released to grab a pair and stuff. So those guys like Nike and Adidas and stuff have systems in place to actually prevent the bot stuff. They've got all kinds of layers of security, and they're far more developed and secure than it turns out Microsoft, Sony, and the people selling those consoles were ready for. They did nothing like that was in place to defend against this abuse of the system. So maybe they need to talk to Nike and see what they can do. I think the obvious thing is deposits, right? I'd have no problem putting 10% down. You know, most consumers wouldn't. So,
was scalping like this such a big thing when the Xbox One came out? When we moved that generation, was scalping such a big thing? I was not paying much attention.
I don't remember there being as much of a fervor around that console generational launch as there was with this one. I think a combination of COVID, lockdowns, people really needing something for Christmas, you know, trying to, you know, because I believe the Xbox One the previous one came out in March, right? So it didn't come out around a holiday season. So there was
Xbox One and PlayStation 4 originally came out in the winter
in America, but it launched in March in the UK. Xbox One,
yeah,
yes, it did.
Nope,
it did.
No, it didn't. Xbox. I worked the Xbox One launch as a Christmas temp at a popular gaming store chain.
Am I thinking of the original Xbox? I am thinking of the original Xbox. That came out.
You may be thinking of the original Xbox. I'm talking about the Xbox One.
Okay, fair enough. However, I don't remember it. I mean, was it crazy for you then? If you worked it, I mean, you'd remember, wouldn't you?
Utterly insane.
It was
very busy. 2 nights, I think, 2 weeks away because I worked the midnight launches for both. Yeah, they were very busy nights. Very busy
But
nights.
I don't remember it being online. Like, I mean, there's always been scalping. I know there's always been people doing that because there's always some shortages, but I don't think it was to this level.
I'm wondering whether this is a kind of a systemic thing, that we've got more scalpers and more unethical users of proceeds and hardware because of changes in society. Because obviously 2020 is very, very different to when the Xbox One X came out, or the Xbox One came out and PlayStation 4 came out. Society has changed significantly. Gaming has inflated hugely in size over the course of the last generation. It's got even bigger than it already was. So that's more people. And the bigger sample size you have for someone, well, for a group of people wanting to do an activity, the more chance that you do get the unfortunate bad apples, or they see the first time round going, oh, I could have made $1 off that. And then the next time comes around, they go, I remember I didn't make $1 last time. I'm going to make $1 this time. And stuff like that. So I wonder whether that's kind of part of it.
I think this year as well, we saw a massive shift online for purchasing.
Yes.
I would imagine it's got to be 70 or 80% of the consoles were bought online. It must be something ridiculous like that. So therefore, the tools for the bot use, the tools for scalp, making scalpers more prevalent have developed, and they might not have even existed 7 years ago. So I think that has made it easier for these people to take advantage of it. The fact that most of it's been online, and the fact that I bought my previous consoles all physically, in a store, right? And this is the first time I've done it online, and for a new hardware release. And so that whole everybody sat there breaking the servers and stuff, and the scalpers are taking advantage because the bots can click and refresh a lot quicker than a human can. So therefore, it's been a very different beast, and they kind of should have anticipated that. And deposits, like put down 10% deposit. That seems like the obvious thing. Like
I'd have zero issue putting down deposits.
If you really want it, you're gonna buy it, so you have a deposit.
What doesn't help is that you have certain retail stores. Again, I'm trying to keep names of specific retail stores out of this, just in case.
There's only one.
There's a certain retail store that deals in second-hand products significantly, that was guaranteeing you £100 profit if you traded in your Series X.
Oh, were they really?
Yeah.
So they were giving you £100 more than the retail price of it if you traded it in. Oh,
Exactly.
because they don't buy new stock. Yeah, they're only scumbags that do second-hand shit. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh wow, that's grim, isn't it? Taking advantage of people there, big time. Wow. Should we we'll jump over one story here, we'll come back to it, but there's related stories here at play to do with this hilarious, like, clusterfuck of a furore that has come up around Amazon deliveries of these PS5s, which we talked about last week. And Eurogamer have been doing a really good job of, like, proper journalistic, like, staying on top of this and investigating this continuously to, you know, to try to get to the bottom of what's happened and can follow up and see what's going on. But basically, Amazon are going to put it right for the customers that got pet food and crap all else in their boxes and didn't get the deliveries. I don't know what they mean by put it right. I mean, I'm guessing give them PlayStation 5s when they get them, really, whenever that is.
I'm very much hoping this isn't Amazon's version of put it right of here's 6 months of Prime and a refund.
Oh, it's disgustingly inconsistent. Like, if you read the reports, everything from a £10 voucher to a £150 voucher. It's like, why is there no consistent response to the consumers on this? Why isn't everybody, you know, because they're not giving refunds, like, for the most part. They are not offering refunds, though there were some automatic refunds that were done as well. So it's all really inconsistent. So it's all over the place because the last thing you want is a refund because you want the bloody console. And then as a follow-up story to this, there was supposedly a delivery driver has been fired because there was CCTV footage of him showing up, handling the box, putting it back in his van and driving off with it. You know, and literally that guy's being fired supposedly for it. But it's just been whether or not this was some kind of organized ring of you know, theft that happened amongst drivers, or if it was just a case of a lot of drivers thought, hey, you know what, opportunistically, I know what this is, I know I can make a ton of money out of this, I'm gonna have it. I don't know, but it seems to be not on a very small scale. It seems to happen quite a lot. There's been dozens of reports, dozens and dozens of them.
Yeah,
so
which is surprising because there's so much tracking of everything going on at the moment. Considering we can get tracking on when, you know, our delivery is at 8 stops away, like down to the road that the van is on.
Yeah,
Amazon must be tracking them as well for that to happen. They must be using some sort of vehicle tracking software.
More than that, I would imagine. Yeah.
Exactly. So how they think that people are going to be able to get away with this, perhaps they just trust on Amazon's monolithic size that they just won't pick up on stuff going on at such a low level. But because Amazon is so massive, that they'll be able to slide under a radar.
Yeah, which is why I'm really glad, like, Eurogamer is, like, shining a light on this to hopefully, you know, get this sorted out. I think you're very right. I think Amazon would accept a probably fairly substantial percentage of what the retail business calls shrinkage, i.e. theft, that's happened by their own employees, because they're dealing in such large numbers that, you know, that level of theft, even with an expensive item like a PlayStation, is still really inconsequential to them when you're dealing with billions of dollars of turnover, you know, on a regular basis. It just doesn't mean anything to them. But I think it's gross that they turn around and offer a £10 voucher to say, oops, soz for your inconvenience there. I think it needs to be a lot. It needs to be a lot better than that, and there needs to be some consistent.
PS5 with you tomorrow.
Yeah, but if they physically don't have it, they physically don't have it, right? So they can't make it appear. And then in a related news, eBay. This is not the first time this has happened, but I kind of am amazed it still happens, where we've got these dodgy eBay listings for PlayStations, which is like PlayStation 5, brand new console, you know, the latest generation of gaming, and then this is brackets at the end, photo, you know, at the very end of the description, so that people don't notice it, and that desperate mums and dads see it and they bid on it, and they're buying a picture of a PlayStation. Or I saw one brilliant one, which was an empty box, and it just said PS5. This empty box signifies the emptiness feeling I have inside because I don't have a PS5. And that's what you're buying. And I was just like, that's kind of genius and funny, and but it's still, you know, there were still bids on it. So
that's wonderful. A box signifying my emptiness of a lack of a product I'm selling. That.
You know, the report indicates there are hundreds of these listings though, selling photos instead of the actual PS5s. You know, and that's just, I mean, come on, eBay, like just search your system and get rid of them.
That's also down to the consumer. Spend 2 minutes and use your eyes to read.
30 seconds, really. Yeah. But, you know, you're dealing with untech savvy mums, grandparents, dads, who don't understand any of this, and who have been nagged by their little Jimmy. I need my PlayStation. I want my PlayStation. I want my PlayStation. And there's a lot going on in the world right now.
100% yes, but there's also, to be able to go onto eBay, type such a thing in, find these listings, you have use of your eyes. Therefore, you should be able to read.
Yeah, I still think they just need to do better at getting rid of these listings. It's just
more effort would potentially need to be done by both parties here. eBay needs to sharpen up on getting that sort of stuff removed or making it more blatant and obvious, but also people need to read a listing properly and understand what they're buying.
At some point, yes, there is a level of consumer responsibility at play here, and it's just like, come on, it's your money. Be sure of what you're doing, or you get taken for a ride.
And this PlayStation is like 400 quid, and you found one for £180 on eBay. Really? Come on. Really?
Yeah. No, I agree. So let's move on to the ongoing saga. The ongoing saga of PlayStation 5's clusterfuck of a launch. And let's just quickly mention that Square Enix, developers of the now critically acclaimed, trillion-selling Marvel's Avengers game. Oh no, hold on, no, it's not sold any. But they're going to do a working from home thing. They're doing a permanent working from home thing going forwards. Post-lockdown, after all of that, after COVID's gone, they are not planning on bringing all their staff back into the office in a compulsory manner. So they've basically realised that this can be done. We've worked this out. It's effective. It's working. We're working well like this. So we're going to cut our overheads, and we're going to go to a working from home practice, which is kind of cool, and I think will be indicative of a lot of businesses going forwards.
I reckon it's really good. I do have concerns about home working where it comes to like mental health and that sort of thing, people contact, especially for someone like in my position where I do live on my own, barring him. So working from home permanently for me would not be the best solution. But the fact that they're giving this as an option to employees and as a hiring model, I think is really good, because it also means that they're not going to, well, hopefully, I'm assuming here at this point, that they're not going to restrict geographically so much on where they can hire staff. You may not need to be in the same time zone as your office, as long as you don't mind potentially working a few hours different. If they're based on the west coast of America in their office, you could potentially be in central or the east coast, and potentially that might open more employment opportunities for you and that sort of thing. So I think that's a really good potential. I think it's a really good move.
Yeah, no, I think looking at the way things are moving and going, and COVID isn't going away anytime soon. Even with a vaccine, it's still going to be probably another year of this, and at the best. So I think it's smart and shows an ability to adapt and be flexible, which is pretty cool. Watch Dogs Legion's multiplayer mode has been delayed into next year, and good. Let me just say good. Multiplayer, yeah. Well, I think it was going to be I think they had some adversarial stuff planned, but it was also going to be full co-op. In the city as well, which looked pretty fun. I saw a video of it. It looked good. But yeah, this game has problems, right? And I've been experiencing one of these problems. And it's very, very frustrating. And I know I'm not the only one. It's basically affecting anyone using a series console, so S or X. Mm-hmm. And if you play in an unspecified amount of time, the autosave function breaks. And...
that's not good.
That's not great, especially as there's no manual save option, Rob. So you basically there's no manual save in Watch Dogs Legion on the consoles at the moment. They've just patched it into PC, but it's not on consoles yet. Now this fix is being looked to be introduced sometime in December, and it's still not fixed. And basically, you go to try to quit to main menu, and it just shows you the little save icon, and it just keeps going around and around and doesn't save. So you could lose anywhere. You could lose anywhere. Basically, reports seem to indicate can start at about 20 minutes. So you could lose anywhere between 20. You might have played 20 minutes, but you might have played 10 hours, and it's all gone. And you just one glance through the Watch Dogs Legion subreddit, which is what I did this morning, just to see what people were talking about. Somebody is like, "I love this game. I played 7 hours of it, and I lost all progress other than the first 20 minutes. I'm not going to play this game anymore." It's just a lot of very peed off people, because it's this game's been out a while. How is this still happening? So
that's good. That is not good at all.
No, they need to fix that shit. Which is unfortunate, because I happened to me the other day, and I kind of went in testing it in mind. I'd known about the issue, so I did some stuff, and I did a couple of missions, and Tried to save, couldn't save, quit the game, came back in, lost all the progress. And I was just like, that's going to be really annoying for people. That's not good. That needs to be fixed now. That needs to be fixed right now.
That needs to be fixed yesterday.
Yeah, I can't believe it's not like they've acknowledged it. They did patch notes. A patch came out a couple of days ago, again on the subreddit, and there's an official like response to, is this issue fixed? And it's the developer comes back and goes, no, but we're aiming for December. And it's just like,
see, I'm thinking this may be linked to another one of our news stories. We're going to skip a story as well because we have a nice little list that we go down. I'm going to skip one because it refers to Microsoft acknowledging Xbox X and S, or Series X and S, performance issues. And predominantly that's down to dev kit availability. Because obviously developers need access to have the tech to do testing and development work on it. And apparently Sony was a lot better at giving out the dev kit than Microsoft was, supposedly.
A lot earlier as well, I was reading,
so potentially this might be why a glitch of that size in Watch Dogs Legions, of that sort of importance, was missed because they had less time with the dev kit before launch.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because on paper, the Series X should be the most powerful piece of hardware. And obviously Microsoft's comment is, early on launch cycle games, people will take better advantage of the system, give it time, blah 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 blah. But just from pure horsepower, you should be seeing better performance in the games that come up. Is Assassin's Creed Valhalla is one that's also talked about, another Ubisoft title, I might add. And obviously now we're talking about Watch Dogs Legion in a related story here. And yeah, it's a bummer that these aren't kicking ass straight away. Now, I played a lot of both of these games, and I think they both play really nicely on my Series S and X. Yeah. However, I've heard about, the PS5, the reports are that it can hit those high-res textures, for example, high-res 4K at 60 much more consistently than we're seeing on the Series X, which is dipping in those frame rate issues and stuff and not. Now, there's a patch that's just hit Valhalla, which has improved things, and it's brought it up to parity, or even a little bit better now. But yeah, it's a bit disconcerting that you spent all this money and it's not giving you great performance. And obviously, I don't have a PS5. I couldn't get a PS5. I still want a PS5, so I can't do a one-to-one comparison here. But it's one of those things. I remember in the previous generation. I originally had the original Watch Dogs. I got that on PS4 because it performed better at a higher resolution on the PS4 compared to the Xbox One. There was a lot of games on Xbox One that released at like 900p. Because they could not do 1080p at consistent frame rates. Just Cause 3 comes to mind in that regard. And that's still, even at 900p, played like utter shit on the Xbox One, with terrible frame rates getting under 20 FPS pretty damn regularly. So that was why we got our stupid mid-generational bump with the Xbox One X, was to deal with those technical problems. And therefore we thought, didn't we, with the Series X, that Microsoft had learned from this, and they're going to come out of the gate really strong with the most powerful piece of hardware. And they've let us down a bit here, haven't they? These games are not optimized for the hardware. They've clearly been developed primarily on the other platform, like you said, Rob, probably due to availability of dev kits. So yeah, bit of a shitter this.
Indeed, it's not good. I try to be an ever-eternal optimist about occasional things. It's a break in my normal tradition. My hope is that then with games that are developed purely for the Series X and PlayStation 5 generations, that dev kit availability will stop being a thing that will be a factor. Cross-platform development, so developing for an Xbox One X and an Xbox Series X at the same time, isn't going to be so much of a factor, because at some point they're going to have to stop making Xbox One games and just make Xbox
say
Series.
That, but I don't know if they do have to. I mean, it's kind of the strength of the platform, isn't it, to a degree?
Disagree, because
they're selling it as a strength of the platform.
At some point, developers will want to do things that are graphically too complicated and powerful for an Xbox One X to handle. And that's going to leave them no choice but to leave that generation behind.
Well, no, it does have. They still do have a choice, Rob, and the choice is we don't release it on the Xbox family. We only bring it out on PlayStation, and because they haven't said it has to be backward and forward compatible.
And if that game is a Bethesda title,
well, then it will have to be backwards and forwards compatible. I mean, if that's what Microsoft tells them, then that's what Microsoft tells them. You know, it's a case of it doesn't. If it's first party, they'll do what they're freaking told. So, but what you're going to lose is the third parties games. You know, that's what you'll struggle with. Which is, I agree. I think personally it has to happen, but the question is, do Microsoft think it has to happen?
To a point, yes, I think, but not something they're going to say now. Now they're too busy still in the selling process, because we've got Christmas coming up, we've just had Black Friday, all that sort of stuff. You know, they're still in the selling thing. Their track may change in 2-3 years' time, because we don't know what's being developed now. There may be some developers out there, potentially first-party ones, that are just sacking off the Xbox One generation completely and going, right, what can we do with the Series X? What can we really push on this thing? We don't know what sort of discussions are happening, and that it's a point that we'll have to come back to in 3 or 4 years after an E3, if E3 is ever allowed to happen again, for us to discuss it more, because there will come a point where things aren't available on every generation.
I mean, to be clear, Rob, that already happened, right? Observer System Redux doesn't play on the Xbox One X. It only plays on the Series X. So, you know, there are already games doing this. That they're smaller. They're, you know, maybe in this case, for example, it's been released as literally as a next generation upgrade. So why would you even consider playing it on the previous generation? You can buy the old game on the previous generation, you know. So it's when it becomes a new title that is being brought out, and the first case of that when it can only run on Series S or X, I'll be very curious to see. We'll be very curious to see. I suspect it's going to be indie. I suspect it'll be smaller level kind of development. The first one, test the waters, see what kind of sales they get, that kind of thing. But I think it's inevitable. There has to be a generational shift at some point. But obviously, you know, like I said, Phil Spencer's language has very much been that, like a PC game, these games can run at different specifications. So, you know, if you have a PC game, you know, that's a low spec to ultra settings PC game, how is that different to how it would run across the Xbox One all the way through to the Series X generation? You just have it on low, you have it on medium on your One X, and then you have it on, you know, maybe a little bit high, say on your Series X, and then ultra on your on your Series S, and then ultra on your Series X. So it's like, you know, that's I think what he wants. He wants it to sort of see the console game, you know, shifting in that way, you know, into the idea that, you know, you're going to have more of a granular sort of specification and ability to alter things, everything from, like, you know, the resolution from 900p up to 4K, you know, so you don't know, all of that should be in the game, and therefore there should be no reason why it can't run all the way across the families, across all the other consoles.
In theory, I completely agree.
It's a lot harder to make. So,
you know. In theory, I completely agree with you. In practice, let's see in 2-3 years.
Yeah, if they draw a line under it. It wouldn't be the first time Microsoft went back on something they said. Exactly. So, you know, that's decidedly possible.
Process change. It could be that they explore that process, but now, you know, the technical demands of, I don't know, the Elder Scrolls 6 or whatever, just as a pure example, fabricated completely. You know, it just doesn't run well on the Xbox One X generation. Just doesn't function as well as it does on the Series X, so they don't want to ship a product that's subpar.
So talking about the kind of upcoming games that could take advantage of this, 4A Games, the guys behind the Metro series and originally Stalker. I'm a big fan of these guys. We launched Experience Kills off the back of a early exclusive sort of preview we had of Metro Exodus. So I'll always be you know, fond of these guys, because that was a really cool event that I got to go to. And they basically said there's going to be a free upgraded version of Exodus coming to the Series S and X in the new year, which is pretty exciting because that game already looks stunning on the previous hardware, so I can't wait to see what they do leveraging the power onto the new consoles, onto PlayStation 5 as well, and how that can take advantage of that. They've also said they're working on another game in the Metro series. Exciting stuff. Ooh. And that this game, because they've now kind of shacked up with Saber Interactive, another developer, this game for the first time ever is going to have some kind of multiplayer element to it, which is something they've never done in Metro before. Obviously, Metro is known for its very story-driven, kind of horror, survival, first-person shooter stuff. Really cool franchise. Now, if they can do something with the multiplayer that fits into that universe and it isn't just team deathmatch, I'll be very interested to see what that is.
That's my immediate. Are they doing multiplayer because they think they can do something interesting, unique, and powerful? And there's another word I'm trying to think of here, and my brain has abandoned me. Something innovative, something good, or are they just going? People like multiplayer. Let's do multiplayer.
So I don't think it's that, because they actually had pressure on them to do that around the release of it was the second Metro game, Last Light. So they had pressure to put in multiplayer for the sake of it, you know, as a way of, you know, the multiplayer was in that generation, 360 generation, was very much about you put it in there to try and keep the game in people's hands so they didn't take it back to the second-hand market, so they, you know, that they didn't then, you know, cause you to lose money. And that's why they nearly did it. They were quite close to doing it. So I don't think they'll do that. I think it's like they're only going to do this because at this point the franchise has gone on for 3 big games without it. It's not like it needs it. So I think they're only going to add it in if there's a real reason to do it that makes sense and is fun and is cool within the Metro universe. People had problems with Exodus because it kind of, to me, was quite a big departure from the Metro games. I mean, my favourite Metro game is still the first Metro game, just because it was such a linear horror survival experience, and I thought Last Light became too much of like an arena shooter, and then Exodus did this thing where it was like almost open world, which I dug, and it was cool and ambitious, but didn't feel very Metro-y, I guess, in places. There were elements of it that were great. But Rob, have you played much Metro? Have you played the Metro games?
I think I played one about 20 minutes when it was on. They are not my sort of games. They are not games I enjoy. I respect the franchise and I respect the aesthetic, and I think the development work into the world they've created is brilliant. All props to them for that. But it's just not a sort of game that personally I enjoy.
What is it about it you don't like?
The survival horror aspect. I just didn't really vibe well with the game I played. And I forget which one it was before you ask, because I know you're about to.
If it was the second one, the second one is the weakest, I think, of the series. But the nice thing is they do all play kind of standalone, and Exodus is on Game Pass, I believe, Rob. So I would suggest giving it a go, especially as you don't really need to have any previous experience, and it's kind of the most accessible one they've made in a way because of the open world nature, and because there's so many granular levels of difficulty as well. If you don't want to go down the survival route too much, you can really make it quite easy on yourself if you want, and just play it more like an exploration-based first-person shooter, kind of like a post-apocalyptic Far Cry. If you want to, you can make it so it's quite, you know, bigger maps, and they do this thing where it's that, like I said, it's partially open world because there are, I think it's 4 or 5 distinct biomes that you travel to on this train, basically, as you're trying to get somewhere. I don't want to spoil the story. However, each one of them is kind of like an open environment in itself. So you have like a snowy wilderness, you have like a desert, you have like sort of a more of a sort of forested area, you know. So you get variety, but then there are like these connective, more sort of structured, focused missions between them, so that kind of connects everything up. It's quite, like I said, it's ambitious, and I'd say give it a go on Game Pass. It's definitely a unique first-person shooter. Yeah, really, it's interesting. But no, the fact that, you know, we've got more coming, they're bringing out, you know, these enhancements. It's 10 years anniversary of the series, which is why they're doing all of this and starting to talk to the community a bit more. Then the 4A Games has never been big about community discussion. I think maybe because they're from like the Russian part of the world and stuff. They're just not the way they do things. But they're going to try and like change it up a bit and be a bit more interactive with their communities and stuff like that. So I'm excited to see what comes out next. By the way, the books are really good as well, which is what they're based on.
Books?
Yeah, they're based on a series of books, so which are really, really good and really engaging and exciting and stuff. And so that's kind of the. So little top this off at the end. Rob, would you run us through what we're getting in PlayStation Plus and Xbox One Games with Gold for December?
So on PlayStation Plus, we're getting Worms Rumble, Just Cause 4, and Rocket Arena. I've heard of one of those games, and that's Just Cause 4. So I don't know exactly the date that they're joining. I assume that
it's kind of like the first. It's usually with PlayStation. Usually like the first week of
Okay.
December. Yeah. So Worms Rumble, I believe, is a PS5 game, and the others are all PS4 games. I want to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
The article I'm looking at does not seem to have that information. Never mind. Obviously, we've all heard of Just Cause 4. I do like the Just Cause games. I
Yeah,
just
3
wish
is a
they
lot
had,
better than 4 though.
Yeah, I just wish they had even 2-player co-op. So I remember back in the Just Cause 2 days, it was just such a solitary experience. Even when you're in a party with someone, go to these map coordinates. It would just be so much better if you go there with someone.
Did you never play the crazy mod for it?
No, because
Just
the
Cause
mods
2 had a
aren't-
crazy mod on PC which did that huge multiplayer experience. It was insane.
See, I wouldn't want a huge multiplayer experience. 2 to 4, all you'd need, and then everything would be fine. Anyway, that's my little soapbox about Just Cause. Rocket Arena looks to be some sort of colourful competitive multiplayer 3v3 shooter as well. And all of these games will be around on PlayStation Plus until Monday the 4th of January. Then with Microsoft's offering for games with gold, we have Gat Out of Hell and Stacking. So obviously Gat Out of Hell is the Saints Row standalone expansion for Saints Row 4, which is actually reasonably good. I've played Gat Out of Hell before. It's an interesting aesthetic. It's not very big. It won't take you very long to complete, but it's nice. It's just Saints Rowy. It's just fun.
I bloody hated Get Out of Hell.
There's a flight mechanic where you can have wings. I'm sold.
I found I think it was the worst Saints Row game I played. I really hated it.
Wonderful.
I just thought it was miserable. Like the whole concept of it was just this miserable, joyless kind of take on Saints Row. I didn't enjoy it at all. Just to be a counterpoint to your enjoyment.
Well, there we go. That's the optimism.
So there's usually a couple more games though. And you said Stacking, and then what are the other two?
I'm just trying to find out at the moment.
Because normally it's 2 Xbox One games and 2 360 games is what they normally do.
Raven Remastered on Xbox Games as well.
Raven.
An Agatha Christie style mystery turned point and click adventure.
God. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, then we've got Double Fine's wonderful puzzle adventure Stacking, which we've talked about already.
Yeah, Stacking's a great game. Stacking's really, really clever and fun and different and silly. And yeah, Double Fine are very good. Very good developers.
And then the rounding it out is Bleed 2.
Cool.
Which I have never heard of.
I think that's some kind of little shooter, side-scrolly shootery game, from what I remember. Bleed.
A relentless arcade action game featuring air dodging, bullet reflecting, and tons of bosses.
Sweet. Cool. I've got to say,
it's remarkably well reviewed. Eurogamer say it deserves an S rank of its own. So apparently, this one is definitely the one to watch and the one to pick up for free.
It is. It's hard to argue when you compare PlayStations with Xboxes, and you've got like Just Cause, it's huge AAA franchise, and then the best thing they've got to mention on the Xbox ones is Gat Out of Hell, and you're just like, oh dear.
My standing theory has been that they've been slowly deprecating games with gold to be poor offerings because they want you to do Game Pass, because all of their good offerings go to Game Pass instead of games with gold.
Yeah, I think when the deals are made, right? So when they approach these developers and publishers with these pitches for the services, the Game Pass one is going to be way better value, like much more lucrative for that developer and publisher than games with gold, because most people now are buying the Ultimate subs, and the Ultimate subs for most people is a Game Pass, isn't it? So it's like, I can only imagine that it makes so much more sense to put your game in Game Pass than it does on games with gold. It just seems that it has more value to it, doesn't it? So I couldn't agree more. But we haven't heard much about. I haven't heard anything about December's games, Game Pass games yet. But it's always exciting to see what's next. I just want this Bethesda back catalog. Get all of those on there already, guys. Come on, sort it out. Right, so that brings us to the end of the news. We have a topic here that is was already contentious before we even started recording. And we were pretty much like pre-arguing about this. So I'm not really sure how this is going to go because we don't have a lot of games to talk about. We don't really have any games to talk about that we've been playing. We've been playing the same stuff we've always been playing. We're like, all right, so let's talk about news and let's try and get into this topic. Now, this topic was suggested to me by my lovely wife. And basically, she came up with the idea is when a game transcends gaming culture is what she wanted us to talk about. Like the idea of a game that gets so big, or a franchise or an IP that breaks out of gaming. It goes beyond just gamers and reaches into pop culture or mainstream culture or, you know, the zeitgeist and becomes sort of a thing of itself. It takes on a life of its own outside of gaming. And it's quite tricky to define this, isn't it? And it's because there's some that come to mind immediately. And then beyond that, me and Rob started to get into like an argument about it. So I think there's the obvious ones is something like Mario, right? I think Mario, you see an image of that jolly face with the moustache and the red hat. Everyone knows what Mario is. It's cross media. There was cartoons. It was the face of a generation of hardware, kind of multiple generations of hardware actually, 8-bit, 16-bit. You know for Nintendo, it's this mascot. It's designed to be memorable and impactful, and it has kind of led that company now since its inception. So that one's a given, I think. But then we started getting a bit more in the weeds, didn't we?
This is actually sort of just twigged something in my head, which may have been an obvious point before when we were having our pre-discussion. But Mario's been around for a long time.
Yep.
So that may be the key, because we also noticed that the four sort of franchises that we have to talk about, Tetris, Mario, Pokemon and Sonic, they are all quite old franchises, really. Yes. They've been around for a long time. So I think maybe that is how gaming transcends pop culture almost and gets into becoming more mainstream, because time passes. People who grew up at 11 playing Mario for the first time are now in their 40s. And suddenly that's more recognizable, more commonplace. So potentially that's time. That's the thing. It's time.
I think time is a factor. However, I'm not sure it's the only factor, because you can look at the attempts of other developers and publishers and studios and hardware manufacturers to create, for example, mascots. So obviously we look at Sega and Sonic, and that's another one I think which is instantly recognizable, which has kind of stepped out a bit from gaming culture. They're not to the same degree as Mario. But then you look at something that Xbox did, right? Xbox created Blinks the Time Sweeper. Now Blinks is never going to be considered something that stepped out of game culture, but it was clearly designed as a mascot, like in the same way as Mario was. It was designed to be the kind of friendly, approachable face of a hardware manufacturer, and it didn't take off. It didn't work. So when you look at the big successes of Microsoft, you think of like Master Chief. Now we discussed Halo, and I think Halo has got out there to a degree, but at the same time, I think if you showed a picture of Master Chief to my mum, she wouldn't know who that was. But she would know who Mario was, or the other one we mentioned, like a Tetramino, a Tetris block. And most people would see a Tetris block and knew that it'd be Tetris. That is Tetris. There is something iconic about the looks of those blocks that stands out.
I learned a new word today, which was Tetramino. I just call them blocks because, they're blocks. But apparently they have their own specific term.
They do, yes, they do. Because the Tetramino describes specifically the Tetris blocks themselves, i.e. in those configurations. Because you can have block configurations that are not Tetraminos. So,
yes, but Tetris blocks. That also describes the blocks for Tetris.
Tetraminos. I didn't make it up. Don't get annoyed at me. It's just what they're called.
With something like Master Chief, I think he's to show someone who isn't at least aware of Halo, he's too generic looking. So he's some sort of space marine guy, right? Is what someone will turn around and say, because he isn't hugely iconic and individual in the same way that Mario is, or the same way that Pikachu is, or a blue hedgehog. Because I am going to go to two words here where there was an event about 4 or 5 years ago, I think, maybe a bit longer, that did transcend everything. And that was the release of Pokemon Go. That was insane. The amount of people who had never looked at Pokemon before in their lives suddenly running around for Charizards was madness.
Yeah, I agree, but I don't think it's because it was Pokemon. I think it's because they tapped into a gacha-style gameplay mechanic that engaged with people. And as was proven by the success of subsequent games in that style, that it didn't matter what it was, as long as it was colourful and you had a challenge and you had to go somewhere to do it. It kind of grabbed at people's consciousnesses. But I don't know if it was because it was Pokemon.
I don't think it was Pokemon, but I think it definitely drew so many more people who you would never expect to even know what a Meowth was.
Yeah, it rekindled a lot of people's interests in Pokemon from when they were kids, didn't it? I remember a lot of people who hadn't played Pokemon or watched Pokemon in many, many years, because they had their iOS or Android device with that game on it, it suddenly helped them remember this thing they loved when they were growing up, which I thought was really lovely.
Yes, you are very right, but I had people who had never done anything with Pokemon before come up to me and talk about it, because funnily enough, I was known as the resident geek in the office. Can't possibly think why. So I was very much embroiled in a variety of people, and no disrespect to them, a good few Essex girls of that sort of type and that sort of thing. Nothing disrespectful toward those people at all. They were lovely. I really really well with them. But they were coming up to me talking about where can I find a Meowth? I need more Meowth candy.
I was listening to you trying to dig your way out of that hole. That's great. Sorry, I just got this image of my. You alright, mate? Oh, where can I get my latest Charizard? Yeah. Sorry. No,
lovely. But they were running around doing more Pokemon hunting than I was at the time. So.
Yes, it was zeitgeist. It was zeitgeist. It somehow captured.
Yeah.
People, didn't it? It hit that thing where it hit a critical level where it broke out of gaming and it broke out of Pokemon, and it became this thing where everyone was doing it. If you had a phone, you were doing it. And it was crazy, even if you just did it a little bit. But most people must have downloaded the app, at least tried it a little bit to see what it was like. I know I did. I didn't get into it particularly, but my wife did for a while there. I remember her driving the car, and I was sat in the passenger seat, and she's got me hunting Pokemon on her phone for her, and I'm like, I don't want to be doing this. I don't care about any of this. But it's like,
I'm driving, do it.
Basically, I didn't have a choice. Yeah, I think that's an interesting one. Yeah, because we were talking. Pokemon is like, it's difficult to define in a singular aspect. So what's the Pikachu's instantly recognizable? I think the other thing is a Pokeball. Everybody kind of would see a Pokeball and have a good idea what that is. Oh, it's that from that game, innit, where you catch little monsters, even if they don't know the name of it. You're kind of going to know it's related. So I think... So it's interesting, we've got some connection here, because we've got three of these things are Nintendo properties on our list. One is Sega, which is now kind of a Nintendo property for all intents and purposes. And they're all from the 8-bit, 16-bit generation. So that's that age thing we were talking about. So now the question for me is that are we not getting these breakouts because gaming is now just part of popular culture? It's kind of like it's not separate anymore. Basically, if you're late 30s and younger, you game at least a little bit. Most people on their phones at least, or in some ways it's much more widely adopted. So is that why we're not seeing kind of like these distinctive breakouts, these obvious things that are sort of transcending gaming culture, because gaming culture is just culture?
But how do you define something breaking out of gaming culture?
That's what I'm saying. Maybe you don't see it because it can't, because it is.
The game culture are going to struggle to see that. But how do you define a breakout? Because a breakout could be that a separate media style comes out linked to it. So
the cross-media.
Yeah, this is something I used earlier in our pre-show discussion. Monster Hunter movie. See, that's coming out. Mila Jovovich is going to be in that, and I think she's the main sort of driving force as well behind that, because she's a fan of the games. I think her and her husband both play those.
Oh, yeah. Yep. But then my counter to that was there are movies of Far Cry and Blood Rain and Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat and Doom, and I could keep going and going and going, and I don't think any of that means it broke out.
Breakouts don't have to be big. The Doom movie, which I have...
No, but that's the point. They do need to be big. It needs to be not just the gaming people watching it, which is what you're going to get with the Monster Hunter movie. Nobody, I think, or there will be some people, but the vast majority are going to be people that are aware of the game. So it's not like it's introducing the gaming franchise to people that hadn't experienced it, not in a noticeable way.
I disagree.
Sorry?
In today's media world, I disagree, because people are going to go and see that film, and they'll take their significant others, and they may go with family if they're allowed because of cinemas, and the C word, which we shan't mention, and all of that. These films are reaching bigger audiences now through population growth and societal growth. More people are being exposed to these things. So yeah, something like the Doom movie probably won't have lured many people into gaming culture. But is that how you define a breakout? Bringing people into the gaming culture? Because then surely that's got nothing to do with cross-media platforms, or nothing to do with much of a breakout.
I suppose I'd probably describe it as like, and this might be something slightly different, because I'm really talking about icons, aren't I? I mean, when I'm talking about Mario and Tetraminos and Pikachu and Sonic, I'm talking about icons. I'm not talking about something that's necessarily just moved out of gaming culture into mainstream culture, because that's, I think, one and the same now. So I'm talking about, I guess, something that has reached a point of instant recognition that you wouldn't get anywhere else. You know, other mediums where you see something like this is that most people would say, I've never read a comic book, or I don't read graphic novels, right? But at the same time, they've heard of Watchmen, right? Even before the films, right? Watchmen was the number one best-selling New York Times bestsellers list, right? As a graphic novel. It broke out of comics to the point where it was just literature, right? And it became known. Sorry, was it? I don't know who he said. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. It smashed everything. It basically, kind of got that recognition way before, the Marvel movies and the DC movies kind of brought comics to the mainstream. It's impressive what it did. So people, even in just literary circles, would know of Watchmen, would have read Watchmen, because it broke out of comic book culture. So, yeah, it's sort of like something that becomes intangibly sort of bigger. It's hard to describe, isn't it? Iconic is the only word I can think of, yeah. And there aren't many examples, really, are there?
There aren't many examples that I can think of, no, because I keep coming back to this point of it will be iconic to some who are, if not directly affected by, but are at least adjacent to people who are affected by it, in a completely separate sphere to someone like me. If you show me iconic footballers, for example, I won't know who a single one of them is.
Except I bet you would know who David Beckham was. And I bet you would know who Diego Maradona was if they showed you a picture of him and then maybe just went in the blue of the Argentina. You would. And I bet you, there's two, you would.
Maradona, no.
Sorry?
Beckham, yes, because the tabloids didn't leave him alone. Maradona, probably not. If you show me three pictures and said,
I bet if you showing this picture of Maradona in his Argentinian strip, you'd go, Maradona. I bet you would.
I don't know what the Argentinian strip looks like, Ben.
Blue and white. Yeah, you're gonna know that.
I'm not. You will be very surprised how little sport I follow.
But David Beckham's a fair point, though, isn't it?
Yeah, he was followed by the tabloids because partly of his wife, I think, as well.
But I think it's a great example. It's a perfect example. He transcended sport culture and football culture and ended up penetrating into pop culture. That is a perfect example of exactly what we're talking about, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think it's very difficult because if we go and use Maradona as an example, I keep wanting to call him Madonna. I apologise in advance.
I only mentioned him because he just died this week, so.
Now I feel bad.
So it's all over the news as well.
So I wouldn't know that. But for gaming, I would recognise Master Chief's silhouette, let alone an actual picture. So for me, Master Chief is iconic because he is sparked.
I also think you were doing him a bit of a disservice when you were talking about him earlier, because he's got elements to him which are very specifically designed to be recognisable. Much like Mario. Mario at his core is a man with a hat on, right? So you could say that's not recognisable. Master Chief is a space marine, right?
Mario,
but they have very distinctive things about them.
Mario's drawn a very specific style with a specific voice and aesthetic.
But so is Chief. Everything you just said is true to Chief.
Chief is drawn to look like a slightly bigger man.
No, but the armor configuration, the helmet, the fact that the helmet has that lip, there are some very distinctive design choices to make him recognizable, like you said, in silhouette. So I think
they're slightly sharper versions of the ODST sets of armors and all of that sort of thing. Which
they all came later. So Chief's design came first, and everything else is derivative of it. So that actually all that does is reinforce the design aesthetic, and actually make him more recognizable because they're just repeating it. So it's not like it's removing from it; it's actually reinforcing it. So I think you've got to remember he came first, and he in that first game is completely unique. There's no one else in Halo Combat Evolved that looks like him. Like even the ODSTs you mentioned, and actually are they? Yeah, they are in Combat Evolved, yes. but they don't look anything like him. They're these tiny little dudes in black armor compared to him. I mean, it just reinforces everything comes from him, and I think it's very strong.
Of that first game, you don't see yourself because it's first person. In basically every Mario game ever,
true,
you see yourself. You see Mario jumping up and down and onto the Koopas and all that sort of stuff. But
so I think
John, you just see the guns in front of you.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. It's a very good point, and I think that connects in my head to Gears of War, right? So you look at the cogs, you look at Marcus Phoenix, right, and you look at him a lot in that game, and yet his design, to me, tell me if I'm wrong, is infinitely more forgettable than Chief's. Because he's more just like a man. He's a normal guy, might be a bit bigger, but he's like a lot of his flesh is on show and is not armored. They've tried to give him a character and personality rather than a design, which I think is the difference. Which is why I don't think you could ever argue that Marcus Phoenix was iconic, but there is, I think, some basis to argue that Chief could be considered iconic. But I think the problem is, like you said, he's first person for a lot of it. There haven't been as many games as, say, Mario. It's, because of time. And they've now been very slow in getting a new one out. So I think he's slipping from public consciousness. So I think if they'd kind of hammered it a bit more, if that film or TV series had come out, like they're talking about, when that hits, and I think the production is actually finished on the new TV show, so that is coming. That will... they obviously want him to become this iconic, synonymous character, because let's be honest, PlayStation doesn't really have that. So I think that would be a big win for them. So I think Chief's nearly there. Like, he's so close, but he's not quite over the edge, is he?
I could show a picture of Spartan 343 to my mum. She would not have the first clue who he is, or beyond, isn't he that guy from that video game you play?
Yeah, but that means to me, if she came up with that, that's kind of like halfway there.
So if I'm showing her something that is
just guessing,
she can go. That's the thing from your gaming, isn't it?
I just realised I've been doing this podcast. I've been waving this coaster around as well, which is my coaster from the special edition of the first Halo Wars, which is a really nice coaster actually. It's for the UNSC Spirit of Fire patch, which is a really cool coaster actually. Really, I just realised I was waving it around. We're talking about Halo. It's quite funny.
I really want that coaster now.
It's a great coaster because it's like 3D and like, so it's not just a flat image. It's sort of ridged and stuff. It's really good. It's one of the best things I've ever got out of a collector's edition actually.
I loved Halo Wars 1.
Really
that was an iconic game for me. That was
all units. Yeah, very good. Yeah. But it's an interesting debate, and I think an interesting conversation to have.
Why don't you guys tell us in the comments or tweet us what you think?
What's iconic to you?
Yeah.
What's transcended gaming to you? What's grabbed you in a way that, like, because I think Chief for me is that guy, because like I read all the books, I loved that universe, but it pulled me in a cross media way. They really did at its height, maybe at the height of Halo 2 and 3, he was more synonymous with gaming and connected people than he does now. I think he's dropped off, hasn't he? He's dropped off.
Yes.
But
because
I think
recently have been poor.
Yeah, exactly. And I think at the height of Halo 3, the fandom for him, the love for Halo was just ridiculous. Now I think most people at that point maybe would have recognised who that was.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's there now. Whereas Mario has lived and tested time. Tetris is there still. Pikachu and Pokeballs are still there, and Sonic is still there. Whereas I think, there are some that have come and gone. And I think that's almost like an interesting conversation in itself. So yeah, please get some comments into the YouTube on the YouTube. Tweet us. I'd love to know what you guys think of as the most impactful, iconic, transcending kind of characters or elements from franchises were for you, that'd be great. We'll revisit this next week or in a couple of weeks' time and stuff when Richard's back, because I bet Richard would have some good input on this one as well. Probably not Cam because he's an idiot, but we love him. He wouldn't even be upset at that. Yeah, no, I think it's an interesting conversation, that's for sure. But like I said, we haven't really got any games we've been playing. I mean, we've been playing more Destiny, haven't we, Rob? You're horribly in the grind.
I'm still in the grind. I've been playing. I've not had much time because of work considerations this week, so I haven't been playing as much as I've wanted to. There is new DLC coming for Total War Warhammer 2, so I've been spending a little bit of time in that in preparation. That drops December 3rd, which adds a couple of new legendary lords, which I know all of this is flying straight over Ben's head.
Not a clue. Not a clue.
Yeah, I think it is much. But yeah, it's going to be good. I'm looking forward to it. I'm feeling the hype. So I've been watching How to Get Away with Murder at the same time as playing Total War Warhammer 2, which is
that's a random combination of things. How to Get Away with Murder.
I can. It's something new, so I like devoting more attention to watching something brand new on Netflix, because I have 3 monitors set up for my PC. So I have Netflix on one, gaming on another, and web surfing and stuff on my third. So yeah,
a little humble brag there. I like that. Just chuck it in there, just to brag it up.
I'm spending this afternoon playing Destiny 2. I have stuff I need to grind. I want to start getting into Lost Sectors and doing that sort of thing.
What's your season pass rank?
In the 30s now.
Nice. That's good.
I'm progressing at a decent clip.
Yeah, not bad at all. I need to get back in as well. Xur's offerings this week were very underwhelming, so I was just like, ugh. It's got these legendary shards building up, like you. Not as many as you. Never as many as you, Rob. It's frightening how many you have. How many?
4,500 of them, I think.
I love it. It's so mad.
The professional YouTubers that I watch, Datto, he has 14,000. But considering how much he plays and how much he just dismantles, I'm not surprised.
If you literally don't play any other games, I can totally see that. Like, 100%, sure. Yeah. That's not my life though. I like trying other stuff. Yeah, so that was a little bit more of a brief episode for you guys this time. I hope you enjoyed it, just the two of us. Hopefully next week we'll have Cameron with us, and then Richard back in a couple of weeks, and then we'll talk about Darksiders, which is I know it's been teased now for about 2 months. So
tease it some more.
Keep you keen. Please give us a like and subscribe. Like I mentioned at the top of the show, we're really close to our big 1,000 subscriber milestone. It's going to be a real hoot when we hit that, and there'll be something. We'll do something for it, I promise. Please follow us at Experience Kills on Twitter. You can find me at DIYE. You can find Rob at Homeless Mr. Gibbs. You can find Richard at Colonel Red. And you can find Cameron at Camelot. Even though they're not here, I'm going to pimp their shit anyway. Yeah, so like I say, give us a like and subscribe. Don't forget, you can get these as audio podcasts from iTunes, Spotify, and anywhere a good podcast can be found. And I do really mean anywhere now as well. If there is somewhere that you do want to get it from and you can't, let me know and I'll try and sort it out for you. Until next time, that's been an episode of Experience, because it's been lovely having you, Rob. It's been great to just the two of us
Always
today.
A pleasure.
Thank you very much. And we've got a week of work looking at us, looking down the barrel of it right now, and I really don't want to think about that, but fun and games.
It's fine. Destiny will save me.
Destiny for the win. Right. See you all soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.